We are Chris Lee and Joey Dwyer of Vandy Sports. Welcome to the podcast, which is part of the 440 Sports Network. Before we begin our show today, our news is presented by the Wash House. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time from the things you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. With two convenient locations in the Nashville area, just drop off your dirty laundry, and our professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, and that is your time. With 24 hours or within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Check them out at washhouseclean.com today and get your time back. Vanderbilt has announced it will donate a portion of ticket sales from its September 26th opener, make that August 26th opener, to the Maui Strong Fund. The Maui Strong Fund is providing financial resources that can be deployed quickly with the focus on rapid response and recovery for the devastating wildfires on Maui. Funding will support evolving needs, including shelter, food, financial assistance, and other services as identified by the organization's partners doing critical work on Maui. Good job there by Vanderbilt. Our thoughts and prayers to the folks of Hawaii who've been affected by just a tragedy that is beyond terrible. All right, a guest today, Joey Dwyer, appears with me. We'll discuss football and basketball and maybe some baseball freshmen, mostly a focus on football and true freshmen. We bring you the show from the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Studio, which is presented by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. A partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide Purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. They now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. Today, they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more information, visit their website at mpmci.com. Okay, Joey, let's jump right into it on the football side. I have been at, today will be practice number 18. I'll be heading out as soon as we're done with this. I think I've been to 14 of them, including two of those which were scrimmages. So I've gotten a pretty good read on the freshman class. I think this is a good starting point. You never know where some other guys will play, but I think if I had to say today on August the 17th, I think there's four freshmen on offense who are going to make a contribution this year. I think those are London Humphreys, Junior Sherrill, A.J. Newberry, and Sedrick Alexander. You have not been to practice yet, but you'll be helping us in our football coverage. I think those are all guys we're going to be writing up and talking about a lot in the next year. How much this year, I don't know. I think they'll all play a role, especially those receivers and maybe the running backs later in the year. Newberry, I think, could come on and maybe pass everybody, but he's a little further down the chart now. Alexander, a guy that played in the spring a lot, led them in rushing in the spring game. But in my mind, those are the four guys to watch as we sit here doing this 9 days from opening day.
Right, and those are the four I had kind of pinpointed as well as guys who will likely see the field. There's two others that I kind of had in the back of my mind, but probably won't see the field based on the depth chart you put out yesterday. Cam Johnson's one of them. I think him playing receiver in high school gives him a really high ceiling, and you obviously know the athletic tools are there, but tight end's a really hard position to learn as a freshman, especially when you have older guys ahead of you. And then Deago, Benson, obviously behind those other two freshman running backs, it seems, and then two older guys as well. He seems to be in the mix, but not quite in terms of playing time yet. Sedrick Alexander is someone I think Vanderbilt fans have seen a lot from in the spring and will give them a lot. But in order, I would probably say Sherrill plays the most just because he's versatile. That speed plays in the SEC even as a freshman, and you can line him up really anywhere. So it doesn't matter who's on the field or really what kind of sets you on a run. Junior Sherrill is going to be able to fit, and that's a guy you want to have the ball in the hands of. And London Humphreys kind of feels the same, although maybe he's not quite as versatile. Maybe has the best straight line speed out of any of those receivers and can do a lot for you and can take the top off the defense, like you said in past weeks. So those are the two freshman receivers to watch. Junior Sherrill, I think, is especially going to see the field a ton. London Humphreys will have a little bit more of an uphill climb because of who he's behind, and maybe not quite as versatile as Sherrill, but I think he'll see the field as well. Sedrick Alexander, I think you've seen a little bit more from in terms of the little things, but I think he can maybe step in and do some good things for him. And AJ Newberry obviously has, when he puts his foot in the ground and turns upfield, it's something to watch. And I think at any point you take that seriously in terms of playing time.
Yeah, Benson is a kid that I think can play also, and the tight end. Good grief, I've gone blank on his name. You mentioned just a minute ago. Cam Johnson, excuse me. Yeah, I think Cam Johnson also might have a shot to play after talking to some people. I just think it'll probably be later rather than sooner. And I'd be a little surprised if he burns the red shirt, plays more than 4 games. If he does, I'm guessing there's an injury. I think they are content with Justin Ball and Logan Kyle as their top 2 tight ends right now. They've got Chris Boyle, who transferred in from an Ivy League school, also in that mix too. And I think they're going to go probably more 4 wides than they are 2 tight ends, unless it's a running situation. So I think that's part of your context for that. Defensively, there's also 3 guys that have certainly stood out to me. I think Martel Hight is absolutely going to play, might even start the opener. I would not completely rule that out. I would think that I would guess that they're going to go Russell and Anderson at their corners, but I'm not sure of it. And I was told yesterday it seems to be like that is a little bit up in the air. So Hight could be the starter. I think Martel Hight today is their most talented cornerback. Demarion Thomas is almost certainly going to be in the rotation on the defensive line. And Brian Longwell, a linebacker that I thought was looking uphill at playing time. Now, they've had some injuries and things like that. The Prince Collie situation, he's still not really practicing, and so that's opened up some time. But Longwell also it's not just been a thing that he's been out there because they've got some other guys hurt and they're a little bit thin there in terms of numbers. It's just because he's been really good in practice. So in my mind, you could see more guys play, but I think those are the 3 true freshmen that I look at and say they're the ones that you're probably going to see on the field more than the others.
Right, and you just have to get a talent like Martel Hight on the field, whether that's at corner, whether that's in the return game. You feel like Martel Hight can make an impact in a multitude of ways, and I would say he might be the freshman on the roster I expect to play the most, offense or defense. I think Martel Hight has a clearer path than a lot of freshmen and also has shown the ability to do so, also competing with some vets and Trudeau Berry as well. But he's done some really good things in camp from what you've said and from what Billy said. But feels like Martel Hight, maybe the guy on the roster that plays the most out of the freshmen. Longwell is another guy who comes from Lipscomb Academy like Sherrill, so he's played against maybe not SEC level competition, but he's played in a system that will be helpful to him at the next level. And I think we've seen that early on. Seems like he had a good scrimmage on Sunday and has built some positive momentum for himself heading into the late camp.
Okay, special teams. I think you could see Hight contribute there. I think you will. He could return punts. They could use him in kickoff returns. Brock Taylor, another guy. I think they're going to go Jacob Borsilla at kicker, but I'm not sure of it. I think you could see Will Ferris kick off. So there's a chance you don't see Brock Taylor at all, but kid's got a big leg. I watched him kick one from 58 the other day. And no rush. It was just kind of off one of those little, what you call it, it's sort of a tee. It's like a tripod where you put the ball and you just kick alone. So like you're not having guys coming at you, not having to deal with snap timing and all that stuff. It's a lot different, but I think that goes to speak to leg strength. So that's another one to watch there. Okay, we're going to go to the mailbag later, but we decided we'd do a freshman-centric episode with freshmen reporting to campus this week. So we're going to go to hoops next, where you have followed their offseason more closely than I have. They've got several freshmen. Give us a quick thumbnail. I know we've talked about these guys recently, just very briefly, in order in which you think that these guys coming into campus as true freshmen will contribute this year.
I think number one's obvious, and I think you know the answer as well based on being at Stack's media session. Jason Rivera-Torres, I think, is going to play a lot. Whether he can develop into a starter by the end of the year is one thing, but he's going to contribute. And that's a guy who maybe comes in as more of a 3-and-D guy, but I think he can get his own shot. I think he can really give them some good things on the offensive end. He wants to put on 10 or 15 pounds of muscle, so he's not quite a finished product, but he can really play. And that's a position where Vanderbilt has some minutes up for grabs. Evan Taylor and Colin Smith will probably play a little bit of 3, but they can't play 40 minutes at 3, I'd imagine. So Jason Rivera-Torres going to find the floor at some point, and I think he could be a guy who maybe isn't an all-SEC freshman, but is going to make a real impact for this team, more so than any other freshman did last year. Colin Smith was probably the best one and averaged 4 points a game. I expect more than that from Jason Rivera-Torres, to be honest with you. He was a little bit of an under-the-radar guy for reasons that we all know. The acting thing, didn't play AAU heading into his senior year, but he can really put it on the floor and score, and really seems driven and like a guy who can give them a lot early on. Isaiah West is the next one that comes to mind. I think he's ready to give them something, but I just don't know where the playing time comes from at this point. Ezra Manjon's going to play 30 minutes. Tyron Lawrence is going to play dang near 30 minutes, if not 30 minutes. Paul Lewis is going to be their secondary ball handler. That probably takes up, 40 minutes of ball handling, if I had to guess, between those two. And then Tyron Lawrence is going to play a lot at the 2. Isaiah West, I kind of view more as a 1 than a 2. I think he's a better floor general than he is a scorer, and I think his defense is really valuable as well. So I'd expect Isaiah West to see the floor just because it's Jerry Stackhouse and he plays all his freshmen. Also, I think West is pretty close to ready, but it's just hard to see kind of where those minutes come from. Also throwing Jordan Williams, the Texas A&M transfer, who I think was technically a walk-on there, but was a somewhat highly touted recruit. Also probably best suited as a ball handler. So I think Stackhouse has got to figure out kind of how to allocate that playing time in the backcourt, and it might not be a simple fix there just because you have 4 capable ball handlers. And then also Tyron Lawrence, who NBA people told him that they want him to play the 1 a little bit. So it's complicated there, but Isaiah West, I think, has a case for playing time. Carter Lang comes to mind next as a guy who might be thrown into the fire a little bit. Maybe he's not completely ready, and I think Stack kind of echoed that. But if Lee Dort's out, Carter Lang's going to have to do some good things for him, and I think they kind of blocked him by bringing in Cometeros, who does some things a little bit better than he does and is older and is a pretty similar player. But Carter Lang, I think, is going to have a chance at some point, whether that's due to injury, due to foul trouble, or due to them just wanting to play matchups with a guy who can shoot it at the 4 and then maybe a guy who can shoot it at the 5. The only option to have two actual bigs out there who can shoot it is Lang and Cometeros. So it'll be interesting to see if he can see the floor. I'm not sure he's completely ready yet, but he's got a good frame. He can pass it. He can shoot it. Maybe not quite a low post threat yet, but Carter Lang does some good things for him. Next, I'd probably go JQ Roberts just because that athleticism plays, and I think he has a little more versatility than Malik Presley because he can slide up to the 4. I don't know if you saw on the board, but somebody threw in a Instagram post that JQ Roberts had put on, 16 pounds of muscle over the summer. That's really impressive, and I think wings can work on their body that way at a high level, and I'm curious to see what Jason Rivera-Torres has done. But JQ Roberts, I think, can slide up to the 4, probably a little bit better suited at the 3. My question is just whether he can make shots at a high enough level, and it's the same for Malik Presley. Both are maybe the 2 best athletes on Vanderbilt's roster, but there's a lot to be desired there still. I think Malik Presley and JQ Roberts, whichever one can hit shots at the highest clip off the catch and shoot, will probably play more. Right now, I'd maybe imagine that's JQ, but Malik Presley, I think, definitely could do that. I don't imagine either of them playing a whole lot anyways, but whoever hits higher percentage from 3, you would think would get more minutes. And then you go to Coleson Messer. I think we've messed up saying Macer in the past. It's Messer. The freshman walk-on. Stack has said he could push for playing time, and I think you'll see all these guys on the floor at some point. But he does not look like a freshman walk-on, according to Stack. Take that for what it's worth. But if you watch the high school tape, you would probably say that's a low-major type guy. And if Vanderbilt can get that as a walk-on, it's pretty good. So I think they have a fine freshman class. It's not a class that has a bunch of superstars in it, but Jason Rivera-Torres has the potential to blossom into a real star, and then the rest can all play roles at some point this year and probably more so in the future.
All right, let's talk baseball quickly before we go to the mailbag. I know you follow the draft some, so did I. Vanderbilt lost 4 freshmen to the draft: Max Clark, Thomas White, George Lombard, Alexander Clemmy. None of those huge surprises. Vandy left with a pretty good class remaining. I think Ethan McElvain might be the prize of the class at this point, potentially. You wrote about him this week, Braden Holcomb. On that list, Miller Green, another Lipscomb Academy kid. Boy, Vandy's just rating Lipscomb Academy lately for sports. Cam Kozila guy, RJ Hamilton, Christian Ossenfort.
Matt
The kid from Matt. I don't know why I called him Christian. But anyway, the kid from Miami who just really, I guess, didn't seem to be highly regarded as a prospect, but just mashed. Those would be on the short list of maybe guys that I would expect to see contribute right away. But I'll have a much better grasp on that after I see them in the fall series, which I would presume will be in October as it usually is.
Right. I think the main two to watch are Braden Holcomb and Ethan McElvain. Those are the two that I think could really come in and contribute. Holcomb, I think, has a bat that could play from day one, although there's still some holes there from what I can tell. Holcomb, I think, could be a real contributor. McElvain, I think, is probably the guy with the best stuff out of the guys they got through the draft. I think they feel fortunate to get him through the draft, and those will be the two mainly to watch. I think there's a battle at catcher there as well that we need to watch. Miller Green could also step in, give them some things, but other than that, I think there's older guys in front of most of the freshmen, so those are the main kind of things to watch for me.
Are you ready for the mailbag?
I am, yes, sir.
Our mailbag is presented by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call. That number, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Joey appears on the guest line. That's presented by John Levine and the Maynard Nexus Government Contracts Group. Maynard Nexus advises government contractors on all aspects of their needs with a proud focus on matching legal solutions to business needs. Okay, VU Matt 23 says rank these outcomes from which is most likely to least likely to happen by the end of the season. Okay, those outcomes are a freshman starting at receiver, a freshman starting at running back, a freshman or redshirt freshman starting at corner, or two young guys starting at corner. Well, I think we can eliminate one easily. It's if what one guy starting at corner is more likely than two, because you got to get to one before you get to two. That is an outstanding question, though.
I agree.
I would guess. I'm going to say it's a freshman starting at corner because I think Hight, to me, he is the most talented corner they've got, as I said earlier. And I think that like as much as I like London Humphreys and Junior Sherrill, London Humphreys right now is not more talented than Will Shepherd. Junior Sherrill might be on par with Jaden McGowan. I think you can make an argument they're a little bit different type of players, but is he demonstrably better? I don't know. I just think that Hight, talent-wise, is better. Now, look, there's a lot that goes into playing corner more than just talent. And I think running back's a one where that's still not a position group that I'm super high on. Patrick Smith has been better in camp, is at least look competent. Gillespie has got some experience in the system, is at least look maybe competent. But I think Newberry and Alexander, to me, are the most two talented backs on the roster. But right now, I think it is. I think it's Smith and Gillespie in that order at running back. So they've got a little bit of hill to climb. But I mean, that is a fantastic question, and that's my take on it.
Yeah, I wrestle with that question a little bit as well. I think receiver's one that's interesting to me because I think those two guys are probably ready to give them something. But there's just so much in front of them with Shepherd, Skinner, McGowan, maybe even Carter ahead of them. But I think those guys will play. I don't know if they'll start. I think the best chance at them starting is probably an injury. If I had to guess, I'd go one corner as my most likely outcome. Probably receiver at 2, just because I think if an injury happens, one of those guys will step in and start, probably more likely Sherrill. 3 is tough for me. Maybe running back, just because I think BJ Anderson is really set into that first corner spot. Trudeau Berry is really talented, and I think he could see the field as well, but it's just hard for me to see them starting 2 young freshmen unless that secondary just completely breaks down and Clarkley wants to send a message. And I don't think he'll do that to the extent that Jerry Stackhouse would. I would imagine that's a lot more in the realm of possibilities for basketball that we'll see all 5 freshmen starting one game for him to send a message than Clarkley doing that. But it's interesting to me to think about 2 corners starting because I think Barry and Hight maybe their 2 most talented guys. I don't know. I haven't seen Barry as much as you have, but I think those guys have a ton of upside. And quarterback's the room that I think, well, somebody asked about this later, but I don't know if it's great now, but I think the recruiting classes have just steadily gotten a little bit better and they can start to stack corners a little bit and start to stack athletic traits. 2024 seems like a good corner class as well. I think they have 3 in that class, including Alvin Williamson. So I think things are looking up in that room, and seeing something from those young guys would be really nice as well. I'll start 1 corner, 1 receiver, 1 running back, and 2 corners for now.
Yeah, and one of the problems at the receiving room is that it's just beating other guys out. I think Jaden McGowan, we now know that he's been hurt twice. That's probably affected his performance some in the spring. And then he had I can't remember what injury he played through last year. So that might account for what slowed him down. If he's healthy, he's probably a different ball player. And I think Humphreys, is competing with Skinner at that other receiver spot, but Skinner went something like a buck 53 and 2 scores in a scrimmage 2 Sundays ago. So he stepped it up when he's needed to. Okay, Mule Train 65. Who out of the young defensive linemen do you think makes the biggest strides this year, and why? Am I correct in feeling like the speed of player development with this staff is a lot faster than the previous one? To the last part first, I think so. I guess if you define young defensive linemen as first and second year players on campus, let me pull the depth chart just to make sure I'm not leaving somebody out. Certainly Demarion Thomas, a true freshman that we mentioned earlier. Darren Agu was going to start at 1 defensive end spot until the injury. I think you will see him starting probably by the end of September at some point. Issa Otara is going to start at that other end spot. I think in his place, he's a second-year guy. And I think that's it in terms of first and second-year guys. Well, no, I take that back. Linus Zunk also, I think, is going to factor in at that end spot vacated by Agu with the injury. But that's my take, and that's a good number of first and second-year players, more than you usually see at Vanderbilt.
Right. I think Agu is one to really watch. I think that's a guy who could really break out. Only had 1 sack last year. Feels like he's in for a lot more than that this year if he can get on the field, though. I don't know how much that health is going to hamper him. Even if he's on the field, I don't know how healthy he'll be, but that looks like a guy who could really break out to me. Also, the other 2 sophomores, I think, could really give them something. When you have a 6'7" end, I think you watch, especially with some of the stuff he did in high school, although against pretty poor competition. Those would be the guys to watch. That sophomore class in particular, I think, can give them a lot off the edge. And I think their pressure from that side will be maybe not better than it has been in the past, but really serviceable, especially with Agu.
Okay, GoDoors 94 asks about the status of Prince Collie. I had a conversation with someone about him yesterday. Prince Collie, for people who don't know, was the kid who was a 5-star recruit, high 4-star, depending on who you consult for your recruiting rankings, who transferred from Notre Dame. He has barely been out there. He's been on the sidelines in shorts, no pads, and I don't know when he's going to play. Clark Lee seemed confident about a week ago that they'd get him back. I don't know what the deal is there exactly, but I don't get the feeling he's going to see the field anytime soon, and I don't think you're going to see him starting this year. I don't know. Maybe he plays by year's end and contributes his depth, but based on the conversation I had yesterday and just seeing what I see with my eyes, I don't think he is going to be the immediate impact guy that a lot of people figured he would be when they got him in the spring.
Right, and I think I was one of those people as well, but it seems that's been derailed a little bit. I think what's significant to take away is that their linebacker room will probably be fine even without him. And I think that's a testament to the depth they've built up in that room with the Pattersons, with Ethan Barr, even the freshmen a little bit. Longwell and Chris have seemed to do some good things. Chris was one we haven't mentioned as well, but it seems like he's done some good things. Maybe won't play this year, but I think you saw on the board that he would have played in past regimes. So it says something about their depth in that room. I think in terms of Collie, if he's going to see the field, it's probably going to be as a special teamer. I remember he scored a touchdown against Clemson last year for Notre Dame, one of their biggest moments of the year. Generally has been a pretty good special teams guy. So if you see him on the field, it's probably going to be in that role to start until they figure out whatever needs to be figured out, whether that's health or whatever. Prince Collie doesn't seem to be in line for one of those spots right now, though, against some of those older guys and some of the guys who have been in the system a little bit longer. Probably still hard for him to learn the playbook with him getting onto campus that late and him committing that late. It feels like he had Vandy in mind for a long time. So I don't know really what the holdup was. Maybe it was an academic thing or whatever. Vanderbilt tends to hold those things up sometimes. But Prince Collie, I think maybe you won't see a whole lot from this year, but maybe you'll see a flash here or there that makes you feel good. Moving forward, still has a lot of eligibility left. Kind of like Vanell Lubin, also Notre Dame transfer. Stack mentioned that he's kind of locked in now to Vanderbilt. So even if this year doesn't quite work out for either of them, they'll be back, and Vanderbilt will have a development plan for both of them.
Okay, a couple more before I get out of here and head to practice. How does this year's freshman class compare to last year's? I think pretty favorably. You look last year quarterback. Obviously, A.J. Swan would have been the jewel of that class. He's starting. You look some other places. Jade McGowan is slated to start in the slot. You got Grayson Morgan as a key backup on the offensive line. But this year, you've got the two freshman receivers we've talked about. You've got, I think, in my mind, more talent at running back. Oh, by the way, on quarterbacks, Walter Taylor and Drew Dickey, also part of last year's class. I don't know that you'll see them on the field much, if any, this year, but they're quality players, I think. The freshman offensive linemen for this year's class, just hard to tell. I don't think they'll contribute a lot this year, if at all. Defensively, we just went over a lot of guys that they're going to contribute that were in last year's freshman class. Wataha, Agu. We didn't really talk about Langston Patterson, but he's been a name that's popped up a lot in our practice reports. We mentioned Barry earlier. But then you've got Hight in this year's class. You've got Longwell we talked about. You've got Demarion Thomas. I think this class stacks up favorably. Now, I'll tell you the place in last year's class that I would have expected more than we've seen so far. They signed a ton of corners last year. And I'm not – a lot of it seems to be health because a lot of these guys just are not on the field. They're being held out every day. That's Jamison Wharton, Jeffrey Ugochukwu. Steven Saniola hasn't taken a rep yet in practice. Gumbo Gaskins, I think, was out the last few days. They're just not on the field to make a contribution. So I don't know if these kids can play or not. But that's the one place – in last year's freshman class, I'm disappointed because other than Trudell Berry, nobody is really sitting there unless some guys get healthy and start playing between now and opening day, poised to make an impact against Hawaii other than him. That's something I would not have guessed a year ago.
Right. I made a quick kind of list and looked at how they matched up. Quarterback, I think last year was significantly better, but they filled kind of the depth chart with that class, so not a whole lot to be expected this year. Running back, I would think, is a little bit better this year. They got 3 guys, and I think 2 of them have the potential to be better than Gillespie, maybe even 3, although Gillespie, I think, is a good runner. Receiver, I would tend to lean a little bit towards this year just because they flashed so early as freshmen. Tight end, lean last year. Offensive line, I don't have a great read on yet. I think that's better question for you. Same with D-line, probably. Linebacker, let me consult my list. I think last year was really solid with Langston Patterson, but this year has the potential to be a nice class as well with a little bit of depth to it. Corner you brought up, I think is really interesting to think about. Martel Hight versus Trudell Berry is really what it comes down to for me, just because we haven't seen anything from the rest of that depth last year. And then safety, it's kind of a one-for-one thing as well. I'm not 100% sure which one I would choose yet, just so early, and we haven't seen a whole lot of either of them yet. But I think, like you said, pretty favorably, especially considering some of the guys they got last year and where they're positioned to get reps at.
Okay, SR Kane, of the players that were on the team last year that didn't make much of an impact, who will make the largest jump in terms of on-field impact? I don't have an easy answer that comes to mind, or maybe when I look down the depth chart, someone will. Guys that played lesser roles last year than they will this year. Let's see. I mean, Justin Ball is gonna play more by virtue of being the tight end 1 instead of tight end 3. He's had a decent camp. Logan Kyle is a guy that they like that's going to play a lot more. He's barely seen the field. You've Junior Zebo, you're starting right tackle, although he started several games a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Watahi would be on that list. Devin Lee would certainly be on that list because of injuries. He didn't play a ton last year. Davian Davis is going to play more, but I think he's a backup. Langston Patterson's one that I think he and Ethan Barr are probably 1A and 1B in some order at middle linebacker. Langston played mostly, I think, on special teams a year ago. I think he's going to see a bigger on-field impact. Either Tyson Russell or Trudell Berry or both, I think, are going to be playing more than they did a year ago. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but those are the main ones that come to mind.
Mm-hmm. For me, what came to mind was the defensive line with some of the sophomores. We mentioned them earlier, but I think those guys could make a jump even if they had played last year. Corners also, when you said, I think Russell and Berry are 2 guys to watch as well in terms of guys who could take jumps. Those are just the ones that came to mind immediately, but I think you covered everything pretty well in terms of that.
Last question from Woody VU66. Does Alexander or Newberry seem to be picking up on pass blocking? Asking because I think they're the 2 most talented running backs on the roster, and this is probably their biggest obstacle to starting. I would agree with all that. I'll be brutally honest here. I am not locked in on what they've done in pass blocking. We're out there watching a lot of guys at once and trying to keep track of 115 guys, basically. So to lock in on that element of what everybody's doing when I'm watching 22 guys at once, I could lie to you and sound good, but that wouldn't be honest. I think that I did ask about that. I don't remember. I think I asked Joey Lynch about that last week, and I think he said he was pretty pleased, but whether that's coach speak or whether that's that they really love what they're doing. I mean, look, freshmen usually don't pick up on all that right away. So I'm a little skeptical, but I think who's out there is going to tell us a lot.
For sure. You'd have a better idea of that than I would. I haven't been there. Maybe I'll be there Saturday. That seems to be the plan for now, but move-in will determine that.
All right. Well, that's the end of the show today. I am doing this on Thursday morning. Not sure when we'll post this. It may be after practice, but I'm on the way to practice to see practice number 17, 18 today. I've lost count already. But anyway, for Joey Dwyer, I'm Chris Lee of Vandy Sports. Thank you to our sponsors. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Next week is going to be game week. So we'll probably have 3 podcasts. My guess is maybe we'll do something Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but don't hold me to that. But anyway, be looking because football season's here. You're going to see more content. Thanks for watching the Vandy Sports Podcast. We'll see you again soon.